You're right, Jeff Kyle. It is happening. Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome to Logik Live. Logik Live number 144. This is called Python Fun and some cool motion vector stuff with Erik Borzi and Andrew Miller. I am so excited to be back. It is a miserable, cold, wet, rainy, and overcast day in the Hudson Valley. But seeing all of your smiling faces and your little icons in the chat window there is bringing some much-needed warmth. It's like I'm feeling my color temperature change as well as my emotional temperature. So, welcome back to Logik Live, friends. We only have a few seconds left in the music because, yes, that's right, Charles Quinn. We are at one gross of Logik Lives, which I'm very excited about, just because we can riff on that for the entire show. I see Jan, I see John Fegan, Chris Noellert, Patrick is here, John Ag is here, who I'm going to see in person so soon. Oh, that happened so quickly. Here we are, my friends. Welcome back to Logik Live. My name is Andy. Let's get the show on the road. I want to start with a slideshow. And as Jeff Kyle knows, every time we've tried to do the slideshow so far, it's crashed. But I feel really good about this, Jeff. I've tested it. And so far, so good. My friends, NAB is right around the corner. April 6th through the 9th is NAB 2025. And we have got a whole lot of Logik happening. And I cannot wait to share everything with you if you haven't seen it already. Let's see, Jeff. We've made it through one slide, which is, I believe, a 100% improvement over where we've been, in the past. Logik at NAB 2025, we are going to be stationed at Caesars this year, which is very exciting. That's where the Logik Suite is going to be. That's where we're going to be doing the Logik After Dark party on Sunday night. Sunday afternoon, we're going to be doing a reception at the Garden of the Gods pool for our Logik Academy Pro subscribers and our Patreon patrons. So if you are a member of either of those wonderful groups of people, either a Patreon patron or a subscriber to Logik Academy Pro, you should have already received an email with information on how to sign up for this event. That is going to be Sunday, the 6th from 12 to 3. And then this is a picture from the website of the Logik Suite this year at Caesars. This is where we're going to have the Logik After Dark party, which is going to be a whole lot of fun. We had a great time last year. The dev team from Autodesk is going to be there giving a special presentation, and then there'll be a bunch of food and a bunch of drinks, and we're just going to have a rocking good time. And this is also where we're going to be doing our master classes on Monday, the 7th. The master classes are going to be taught by the luminaries, a group of Logik luminaries, as I like to call us. Myself, Brooks Tomlinson, Brian Bailey, Finn Yeager, Jan Clear, and Sinan Viral are all going to be there. The master classes this year are sponsored by Autodesk, HP, and LucidLink. And thanks to our friends at LucidLink, they're free. Oh, you know what? Before I talk about that, I did have this wonderful slideshow of pictures from last year's NAB. I mean, you can see Randy had an amazing time. But no, we really had a great time last year, and we're looking forward to Burned at the pool again. But we're looking forward to having another amazing time. This is just to get everybody, there's Eric, everybody excited about NAB. And Andrew, our guest, says, wow, this is like a preview right here of our show. This is amazing. But yeah, we had a great time, and we hope you can join us all this year. Hold on. Oh, I look very concerned. These were our master classes last year. Look how much happier Randy was at the end of NAB. It was great. And this is, by the way, this is one of my favorite moments from NAB 2024. A bunch of us were at the party for B&H, and it was on the roof of the Cosmopolitan. And I look over at Finn, and I was like, oh, Finn must see something, down on the street that he's recording. No, he has an app on his phone that measures how many nits the screen is putting out. And he was wondering how bright, like, one of the LED walls across the street was. And to me, that was like the ultimate, NAB moment. But this year, our master classes are free, courtesy of a generous donation from our friends at LucidLink. And you can see the lineup here. At 10 a.m., actually, we're having one taught called Mocha Pro Under the Hood that's taught by Martin Bernard from Boris FX, who is the product manager for Mocha, which should be phenomenal to see kind of Mocha from his perspective. Or really, for me, the only way to really understand a tool is to understand how it thinks. And so Martin is going to provide that for anyone who attends. At 11 a.m., and Jan is going to teach Color Grading 101 in Flame, and then right after that at 12, a 201, and so it'll be a wonderful little combo class. But then we're going to get into advanced color management with our friend Finn I'm doing something called intermediate flame, which, as Randy has pointed out, is good because that's kind of the level where I am right now. So it's excellent. I'll be able to share that with y'all. At 3 p.m., a set extension masterclass with our friend Brooks. 4 p.m., 3D modeling, shading, and rendering in action with Sanan Viral. And at 5 p.m., advanced type techniques in Flame with our friend Brian Bailey. Again, these are all free, courtesy of LucidLink. Space is limited, just it's limited to the size of the Logik Suite. And so you're going to be able to sign up for those classes at the Logik After Dark party on Sunday. And again, we're doing these classes on Monday. So that's kind of the rundown for NAB. All the information about Logik at NAB 2025 is available at logik.tv/NAB 2025. Oh, let me switch back to this because I am right now putting together, I think you can see the box over there. Our friends at HP sent me one of their new Z6 workstations that's got a Threadripper in it and an A6000 ADA card. And so I am putting that together, and that's what's going to power the master classes. That'll be there in the Logik Suite. It's a kick-ass machine. It's very, very sweet. You'll be able to check it out and see all that it can do. But that's going to be Logik at NAB 2025. I want to thank our friends at Autodesk and HP and LucidLink for making all that possible. We hope to see as many of you there as can possibly be there. There are lots of new videos on the Flame Learning channel put together by our good friend Jeff Kyle. There's one on macOS background rendering or background reactor, which is now possible with Flame 2025.2. For everyone out there who uses DaVinci Resolve, you now have the ability to load DaVinci Resolve setup files through an OFX node, so you can bring the grade settings right into Flame. And then a tool that I am loving in the latest release of Flame is the new machine learning morph tool. Absolutely fabulous implementation of a tool, so I highly recommend checking out this video and then checking out the tool. And you can see them all at youtube.com at Autodesk Flame. Thank you very much, Jeff Kyle. And I think, my God, Jeff, it worked. All right, my friends, back to the show. I'm just going to hide this window here. All right. I want to invite my two guests on today. Let me see if I can unmute them. My two guests today come to us all the way from Los Angeles, California. I had the pleasure of hanging out with both of them at the LA user group meeting and then afterwards at their office last month. And let's give a big Logik Live welcome to our friends Erik Borzi and Andrew Miller. Hello, guys. How are you? Hey, man. I have an applause button there. There we go. Oh, listen, the crowd is going wild.
It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. And again, I had a great time hanging out with the two of you at MTI Film where you work, and then at the LA user group the night before. We're going to start off the show today with Erik. Erik gave a presentation at the LA user group showing off some Python scripts he wrote that were just like the crowd. It was wonderful. Like you're going to see them. I bet you at home you're going to have the same reaction that the crowd in LA did with each successive script that Erik showed. Like the applause got louder. And so we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to go ahead. Well, first of all, let me say hello to Erik. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm feeling so much adrenaline right now being live. I used to jump out of airplanes. It's just a whole different kind of adrenaline. It feels great.
That's a good analogy for not just doing Logik Live, but being a Flame artist. You know, you got to make sure the shoot's packed well, or well, anyway, I don't even want to think about it. So, even Maury, look, Maury is just saying here that your presentation was great. So there's a confirmation. So I'm going to go ahead and share Erik's screen, and why don't we just dive right in, man?
Andy, thank you for this opportunity to show these tools. I'm super grateful for you and Randy for this community. Let's dive in. So it's 5 p.m. on Friday.
Oh, I didn't realize you had one of my batch setups. Hold on.
So imagine, are you ready, Andy?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So the scenario is 5 p.m. on Friday. You've had a long week. You're tired on Friday. The producer walks in and says, hey, we got a shot for you from someone else, and you need to dive in and have 20 minutes to fix it. And this is what you have. Now, I'm guilty. I've made comps like this before in the past when I'm concepting and building, but the extra steps to make the comp look polished really help me. And if my shot ever gets passed off to another artist, in case I'm sick one day and they have to jump in a shot, it's nice to be able to hand them something like this. Super helpful. You decide, what would you like to start with if you were in my situation? All right, so thank you. A little backstory. Last year, I watched Andrew do a swan dive right into Python. And within a short time, he started developing really cool scripts and tools for our pipeline, for conform, for batch. He even wrote a great tool for Mocha that helps us do perspective grids inside of Action. I invite you to check it out. And he said, hey, check out Python. You might like it. And immediately that wall of fear showed up. And I'm like, but whenever that wall shows up, I have this great relationship with fear where I just draw a door in the fear and I step right through it. And every time I do that, there's a reward waiting for me on the other side. And here I am on Logic Live. So um,
Woo!
I got on udemy.com and did a course in Python to get the fundamentals down, to understand how it all works. And after a certain point, Andrew said, this is great. You're doing great. Let's get you into Flame and have you write some tools. And he said, so what do you want to write? And looking at the spaghetti code monster, and I've been doing node graph work for over 20 years, done everything from Hypershade and Maya to back at ImageWorks, we had Bonsai and Katana and Nuke and now Flame. And there's some tools that I've always wanted to have to help me manage graphs. And so I thought it'd be fun to start developing some of those tools to help me work more efficiently and to keep the spaghetti monster out of the house. And so let's dive in.
All right.
So I decided to call these tools node ops, node operations. As you already know, most people will connect nodes like this by hand, and you can do this, you can do this, and so forth. But what if you select all the nodes and with one keyboard shortcut, it automatically connects? Thank you. Now, for these scripts to work, you need at least 2 or more nodes to be selected. So I'm hitting Alt-X to connect. And with these 2 nodes selected, I'm going to right-click. And down here, you'll see node ops. And these are some of the scripts I'm going to show today. And while I'm here, I'd like to cover something really cool that Fred Warren showed me at NAB last year, the keyboard shortcuts. And this is really cool user interface. So if you type in node ops, and do a search, you'll see all the scripts. And let's say I want to assign something to this. So if you hold down the Alt key, all the keys that are in white are available, so I can do Alt 5 and assign it to that. I can also hit Meta Shift, and so forth. Super useful. And by the way, whoever developed this and created it, thank you. I love this so much. It makes it super easy.
Agreed. That is one of the hidden gems, is the ability to put a keyboard shortcut on not just your Python scripts, but any one that you download, like from the Logic portal or whatever. Totally.
100%.
And Eric, I'm keeping an eye on the chat, Eric, in case there are any questions. But right now, it's all very cool, crazy cool, a bunch of exclamation points. Love it. So keep going, man.
Awesome. Thank you. So this also works with the media input nodes and elbows. So you might be asking, hey, that's great, but can I do multiple nodes at one time? Yes, you can. So we have our source, I'm going to select it, and our destination, and again, regular nodes, media inputs, and elbows, and I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-X. And
wait, I have a question for you,
sure.
Eric, because can you just pan back up to that that group that you just showed? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I tried writing a Python script that did this, and right. it failed for me. And the thing that I got hung up on was almost like selection order. Like what was happening was that what I think was I just wrote like a simple for loop, basically saying, hey, for whatever's selected, make a connection. And I think Flame, the thing I never took into account was which one is the first connection and which one is the second connection. In your script, how are you figuring that out?
Great question. So this script was actually developed later in my scripting experience. You're going to see later, I'm going to show some scripts that are used for aligning nodes horizontally or vertically. So they're looking at where a node lives in screen space and XY coordinates. So we're building a list of that data. and then we
Oh,
can access that list and do it that way. So you know where
that's
something
genius.
is,
Okay,
top,
that's
bottom.
genius. Yeah, so you're making a list of the coordinates basically of where each node is, and that's determining. Oh, brilliant. Okay, love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But actually, before you go on, there's a couple of questions. Do you mind if I just ask you to give the questions from the chat?
Sure.
John Ag is wondering. Actually, he started with an OMG, so clearly this struck a chord with our friend John. Does that work on multi-channel clips into action? Like if you have like a multi-channel EXR with 5 layers or something, and then you have 5 media inputs in action, can the script either as written or can it be modified to connect,
My
each
response to
layer's
that,
output?
my response to that is it can be modified to do exactly what you're asking. So you could have a specific script just for that function. So if you're doing a sequence of shots where you need those channel outputs to go into certain nodes, of course.
Cool. Wonderful. And then I'm sorry. Charles was wondering, would the script replace current inputs? Like as it's written now, is it only for like places where there are no connections, or could it be used to? I guess maybe if you use the multi-channel EXR as an example, if you were going to replace that with a new multi-channel EXR, would it be able to replace a connection that currently exists?
So you're talking about something like this where you do this, like that.
I guess so. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Well, so far so good. I guess if the inputs and outputs of what you're replacing are the same, the connections will probably be maintained, right? Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
great question. And I invite you to try it. And maybe that's something that we can integrate in the future versions. So,
Sweet. All right, moving on. Thanks, man.
mhm. Okay. So the very first script that I developed for Python was this one. And up until this script was developed, when I would clean up my node graph, I would manually fudge the nodes around and kind of get them to where I wanted to be. So it's somewhat horizontal and evenly spaced. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a script that just does this automatically and it's flawless and perfect, just for fun as an exercise? So the way it works is the first node defines X and Y in screen space, and the last node is the max distance from that origin. And then in the script, math is done to calculate the spacing. So let's see it in action here. I'm going to select these nodes. And for this, I'm going to hit meta H. And there you go. So now if I want this to be longer, again, meta H, or shorter, I can move it over again. And meta H.
That's great. Love it.
And sometimes we have for specific reasons, we'll have a long gap between nodes. You might have chunks of node graphs that you're putting together and you want to keep them separate. So we want to honor that. So this is a non-uniform horizontal align. So I'm going to hit meta shift H, and there we go. It's preserved. And again, we'll do it with this one. And this one, I'm going to do a regular horizontal align. And the batch node is already, or the graph is already looking better. And just with a few keyboard shortcuts, we can make our node graph look much, much better. Now, in this example, as you can see, these titles are very, very long, and it's not easy to read what's going on here. So for this exercise, I thought, well, it'd be great to align these horizontally, but to have a sawtooth pattern, and just to make it more legible. So let's try that out. So I'm going to hit meta 6, and this window pops up. And lately I've been using 175 and it seems to work fine. Feel free to change it to your liking. So offset height. And now you get a sawtooth pattern and everything is legible.
This is great, Eric. The Chris is saying you found the cure for my flame OCD, and Jeff says that's really nice. I do that kind of straightening out all the time, so you're absolutely hitting a chord here, man. Well, love it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we can do horizontal and we can also do vertical. So check this out. There you go. One keyboard shortcut. Super fast. Just like that. And let's try it on a graph like this. So first I'm going to do the horizontal. And because this is the origin And when I do the vertical for this one, this is the origin and this is the destination or the max distance. I'm going to hit Alt V and you're going to see how this snaps over to that. And the same for this. So now that this is the same length as this one, when I do the horizontal align, everything is even. And because this is the origin and this is the max distance, when I do this, this is going to automatically snap into center. And just like that. And again, this is the origin, this is the max distance, and this will create a horizontal line here. And just like that, we have a clean node graph.
That's awesome. Quick question from Patrick. He's wondering, he uses Snap to Grid, and how does this work with Snap to Grid? Or does it work independently, I guess?
Independently.
Okay, cool. All right, moving on.
So again, non-uniform, you have intentional gaps. This honors that with Meta Shift V. Just like that.
Love it.
Okay, so compasses. I love compasses. They help me keep my graphs tidy and I can create sections that are clearly identified. And sure, we can do the classic technique, which is to see, click, drag, and you have your compass, and then you can move it around and get what you need. But what if you just select the nodes and it automatically encompasses the selection? And so I can very quickly move through a batch and have compass nodes just like that.
Eric, you're making me wish that I had at least 2 different applause sound effects. But all I have is the same one.
It's all good. It's all good. So you might be asking, can we use these alignment tools on compasses? We can. Check it out. So I'm going to hit Meta A for horizontal and Meta Shift A for vertical. And you're probably thinking, well, come on, man, let's see it with nodes inside of it and compasses. I want to see a real world example. Well, okay, let's do that. So again, we have the origin and the destination. We're going to select all these. Meta A, boom. So funny.
I could do this all day.
And it also works on vertical nodes. So for this, I'm using Meta Shift A. And in the spirit of Python exercises, I thought, what if, we have this monochromatic environment. It's a lot of gray. And sometimes it's nice to have a little color pop on this batch, sometimes for intentional purposes. So let me give you an example here. So I thought it'd be fun to do gradients. Like, can I do a gradient from one node out of a group of selected nodes to another node based on 2 colors? And this is the result. So here we go. Meta Shift G.
This is divinely inspired, Eric.
And here's Meta Shift Y.
Oh, it's so great. Yeah, you didn't have this. You didn't have this at the LA group. This is new.
This is all new.
This is great.
Many of us work on split screens where we're working with stuff from the left side of the plate and stuff on the right side of the plate. And these are compass nodes. And by the way, you can adjust the script so that it works with labels on nodes. It doesn't have to be compasses. And I invite you to, as a Python challenge, to do that and play with the script. So in this case, I want to identify left and right with blue and red. So I have Meta Shift S, and just like that. And for stereoscopic stuff, for the right and left eye, again, just like that.
That's great.
So when I zoom out, I can quickly see, oh, that's stereoscopic. I know exactly what that is and dive right in. And before I go on to the next part, I have a few things I'd like to say. I want to say hello to my biggest fan, and that's for you, Mom. I love you. And the list that you see here, I want to say thank you to each and every person on this list. I've been in this business now for 33 years, and on this journey, I've met many incredible flame artists. My first studio that I worked at was Click 3X in New York, and met some great guys there, very inspiring. And over the course of my career, I've always had this yearning to learn Flame, and I've been using Flame now for just under 3 years. And I just want to say thank you to all of you and to our community, to you, Andy and Randy. Your support has been incredible. It's so nice to have a space to go in the forums, to ask for help, to ask for guidance, to be inspired, to have a good laugh. You guys are so funny. I love reading the forums. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's
And
great, man. Thank you. And there's some great names in there. Joey Bradisani is one of my favorite people. I worked with Roy Werner so long ago. That's
yes,
great. That's
yes.
wonderful. I'm glad you've had such a wonderful journey, and thank you for sharing it with us, man.
So you're probably asking, when do I get the scripts? And
Yes,
my
actually, there was a
intention
question in the chat about that. I think it was Mark. Mark Wellington was asking, are they available somewhere?
soon. I see that Mike V is on here, and Mike, thank you for all that you've done for us. I'm going to be reaching out to you personally to find out the best way to get these scripts on the portal. So I need some guidance. I've never done this before. And so within this week, you're going to have access to these scripts, and I'll make an announcement on the forum and let everyone know where they can find them. And I invite you, if you feel any fear around Python, just to walk through that door, dive in and have some fun with it. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to be frustrating at times when you're learning it first, but it does get easier with time and repetition like anything else. So go for it. And if you have questions, they're welcome here. Just ask. Thank you,
That's
Andy. I'm going to
great.
hand this back to you.
Man, Eric, thank you. Round of applause for Eric. That was awesome. And as someone who went on their own Python journey, I couldn't agree with you more about like how it can be. I've never felt more frustrated, I guess, and never had more success in like the what my wife calls like the poetry of profanity, which would she'd hear like coming from like the office here upstairs as I was trying to figure out Andrew. I can see Andrew laughing in the little preview window here. In trying to figure out like why a Python thing isn't working, but when it does work, and then especially when you use it in production, then when you share it with other people, it's the greatest feeling in the world. So, thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate it and appreciate you. And we're going to switch over here to Andrew. Andrew Miller, let me see if I press this button. Is that going to... Hey, how's it
Hey,
going?
everybody. Thank you
So
for that, Eric. That was great.
What you can't tell from home is that Eric and Andrew are sitting right across from each other.
Yeah.
What do you got for us, my friend? Let me bring your screen up.
Yeah, let me get my flame up for you. So I had got a couple small little Python things I figured I'd show in the spirit of keeping that going. And then some motion vectors and frequency separation stuff. I don't know if it will be quite as exciting or as daily useful as what Eric showed, but I hope some of you guys get a kick out of it. First off, I want to show, before I get into the couple of shots we're going to look at today, a little tool that I made. Both the Python scripts I'm going to talk about today are things that I've sort of integrated with our shot grid or flow production tracking, whatever they call it these days, to just...
I love how everybody's voice drops when they have to say flow production tracking.
But, we all have to track time somehow. I like to do it and not have to bring up a browser or a Google Doc or anything like that. So I made a script that will, if I right click on the background of a batch, it will search my ShotGrid database and find any tasks that I have assigned to myself on that batch. And then I can start a time log just by clicking whatever task I want to work on. So let's say I want to do some roto on the shot. It's going to make a compass with a note that tells me when I started the time log. And once I've started a time log, when I background click the next time, I'll get a different contextual menu that will ask me to stop whatever task I'm currently working on. And once I do, it'll send that to ShotGrid as a log, time log entry, so that I can compare it against our bids and check bids versus actuals and, invoice people and get paid and whatnot.
Get paid and whatnot. I'm taking like the reaction already is like, from the chat. Everybody loves this. So
I'm glad.
Keep going.
Cool. All right. So on to the actual shot. I wanted to talk a little bit about motion vectors. This particular shot would not really be beauty work. It's a little bit grisly. So I hope everyone's, digested their breakfast and whatnot. But I do a lot of beauty work where I really love to use motion vectors because, heads are very three-dimensional. And sometimes you can only get so far with planar and heads and faces and bodies in general. There's only so much you can do with point tracks and planar and whatnot. So I do a lot of motion vector tracking to get those subtleties in skin and clothing and whatnot. And last year I was doing a series of shots that I wish I could show. Unfortunately, they are owned by Mickey Mouse. But a series of shots where we had some actors playing dead bodies, and we needed to keep them still, keep them from breathing and blinking and whatnot, all those fun things. But we were at a crime scene somewhat like this, where red and blue lights were flashing all over the place. And so I didn't want to really use just a regular still frame of these people, because then I would have to recreate all of the flashing blue and red on top of them. I wanted to be able to somehow stabilize the actual movement that was happening, but keep all the lighting changes. And that led me down the path of sort of using motion vectors and frequency separation to get the tracks that I needed and the stabilizers that I needed. If we look at this shot that I have pulled up right here, we've got a similar thing going on. We've got red and blue flashing lights, and we also have a camera flash that goes off. The red and blue lights on this particular shot didn't end up being as much of a issue, but the camera flash, you'll see, one of the things I like to do on really like any kind of tracking is use it as a stabilize to sort of verify the track, whether it's motion vectors or planar or a point track, whatever it might be. Use it as a stabilize so I can see where it's holding up, where it's not. So I cached the motion vectors on this shot. And I did two different versions, one on just the RGB. And if I show you this as a stabilized now, you'll see that when that camera flash goes off, the whole track falls apart.
Yeah.
And there's ways around that. I could, morph through those couple of frames of flash and then cache the vectors on top of that. I'm sure that would work well here. But if we look at, I took the newish frequency node and I did a frequency separation operation on it. And I like to think of frequency separation as a sort of fancy like difference mat. You're basically looking at an image and saying, what's the difference between like this image and a blurred version of it? And usually that is just the high frequency details, lines and dots and skin texture and who knows what else, depends on what you're working on. But what frequency separation is also good for, especially in video work, is getting rid of some sort of temporal lighting changes. If I look at just the high pass of this image, you can see that it's really gotten rid of all of that red and blue flashing. And I am getting a little bit of a pop on the flash still, but it's gotten rid of the vast majority of lighting changes, and now all I have is just the sort of details of the image. And this is really useful not just for motion vectors, any kind of tracking that you might want to do. If you have issues being introduced by shadows or flashing lights, anything like that, give it a shot retracking just the high frequencies. Because if I come back to my stabilize and I switch my motion vectors over to the high pass ones, now no more pop when the flash goes off. Where's that flash frame? I'm glad you like that, Andy.
It's the best. Like, it's one of those things where, I only ever thought of frequency separation for things like beauty cleanup. I never thought of it as a possible source for motion vector tracking. It's like, boom, this just opens up. It just blows it out of the water for me. It's like that. It's just a wonderful example of really understanding the nature of the tools that you're using, and then, how you can use them to your advantage, especially when you're combining them together. So I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think when I first started using motion vectors, they were kind of scary to me. It it seemed like this sort of like black box where you didn't really know what you were going to get out of it until the end. And the more I use them, the more I've realized that you really can sort of manipulate your input a good amount to get better results out of them, either by just, doing color corrections to enhance the contrast of certain things that you want to get tracked better, by doing frequency separation to focus on specific parts of the image, by even just doing sort of like quick and dirty, like patchwork with traditional 2D offsetting and stuff like that, just to cover up occlusions that are messing up your vectors. They're a lot more malleable than I think I gave them credit for in the beginning. And the next thing I'm going to show about motion vectors is I use them, like I said, for beauty work all the time to do to create mats and do roto. And the thing about doing roto with motion vectors, let me make sure I have the right ones loaded in here, is that if I draw a spline on my image, let's say that I wanted to, get a shape for this bloodstain. And then I'll set a reference frame on my motion vectors. The other thing that Andy appreciated when we did a run through of this was I love this matchbox that comes from Autodesk, the Matte Viewer matchbox, just as a way to sort of check out how your roto's working. You just pipe in a front and a matte, and it gives you a little color overlay, or alternatively, you can have it pre-molt for you and pick the color that it pre-molts over it. And you can set it to semi-transparency only to get the soft edges only, if that's what you care about. But
it's perfect. Who knew? I had no idea. That, again, like we talked about during the Matchbox shows, you only ever use the ones you use, and the rest of them are just kind of a mystery. And this is just, it's wonderful. I love it. Love it. Love it.
This is one of my like daily driver matchboxes, honestly, just because it's, that 30 seconds quicker than grabbing a color correct node and pushing it pink. All right, so back to the motion vectors. If I pull up that map viewer as a context and scrub through the shot, the vectors have gotten me, pretty close, but like most roto, I'm still going to have to do some manual adjustments. But if I stay in my GMAS trace or stay in my roto node, you have this issue now, or even if you have some sort of like map viewer type matchbox or some setup to view the mat in context, you're still moving a spline around in, view space that is not actually lined up with the thing that you want to modify anymore. So if I wanted to get the little indent in it, I'm kind of firing blind, relative to how I would normally do roto. So we got a kind of sneak preview of this earlier, but the way I've gotten around this is by going into so I already stabilized the image with the motion vectors earlier just to take a gander at how the motion vectors were holding up. Now I'm going to use this as my roto source. So if I come in here and draw, roughly that same spline, and we'll just scrub to the end. Don't need to do this perfectly. So now I could either, destabilize the result of this GMAS tracer by bringing it into inaction and reapplying the high pass motion vectors, or if I don't want to double tax my GPU by inferring from the motion vectors twice, I can just copy this GMask and bring it into my tracer that's not on the stabilized version. And as long as I set the same reference frame, I will get the same effect, but I'll be able to actually do all of my roto work. What was the reference frame on this stabilized? The last frame? Cool. So if I add the last frame as a reference, now I'll get the exact same results that I got from rotoing on top of the stabilize, but I was able to do my roto in a way where the spline actually lined up with what I was rotoing.
No, it's great. I'm so glad you called out that you wanted to come up with a methodology to do this that didn't double tax the GPU, because for a couple of reasons. One, there's like for certain users on certain combinations of hardware, there's there are memory leak issues, or the more you use motion vectors, for the more shots, you end up in a situation where you have to exit or restart.
Mm-hmm.
You should always be conscious of how you're taxing the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
But we all get into a situation where you're doing this. Yeah, this is one roto on one bloodstain on one part of the shot. You may end up with 10 of these in one shot.
Yeah.
If you end up, duplicating the workload on the GPU across every layer or everything you have to affect, thinking this way is I'm so dialed in to trying to figure out the most efficient way to work. And so this is what a great workflow. Love it.
Something I didn't prep for this demo just because the performance was more or less fine for this particular shot at this length. But something that I learned from you at NAB last year was rendering out motion vectors as UV passes, which is also super useful. If I go into my action that's doing the stabilize and bring up the UV pass, it's hard to see, but it should be basically applying those motion vectors as a UV, which you can render out as DXR, and it's a lot more system friendly most of the time.
Yeah, totally. I learned that from John Ashby at a New York user group meeting several years ago, and he showed it as a way to avoid having to recache motion vectors.
Yeah.
And then there were some other ancillary benefits as well, but it certainly has its pluses.
Yeah. I guess the last little tidbit in this particular shot, it could be in any shot really, but the other thing about motion vectors as a sort of tracking source for mats is that I don't think this particular mat is going to have this issue, but for the same reason that the spline doesn't move when you, or that the spline doesn't move when you attach the motion vectors, it's that, it's actually drawing the pixel output of the mask first and then applying the motion vectors afterwards to that rendered spline, like you would if you brought an actual image surface into action. Which means that sometimes if you use the actual Gmask blur, you can already kind of see that this edge is not really getting an even blur because of how the motion vectors are applying to it. So something I like to do instead, you can always just like grab a blur node and blur the whole output of the tracer if you want. But you can also attach a blur matchbox to the camera of your GMAS tracer, and this will apply a blur after those motion vectors have been applied. So now I can get a nice even soft blur fall off by just staying all in one node, which I personally like to not.
I have to tell you, Andrew, this is why I love Logic Live. I mean, and just Logic in general, but especially I haven't attached a matchbox to the. Yes, Quinn, exactly. I haven't attached a matchbox to the camera since the Stingray days. It was one of those things that once we didn't need to use that anymore, or there were other solutions anymore. It's something I totally forgot that you can do. It's just a great technique. Love it. Yeah, Maury loves that. Good show, man. Love it. Love it.
It is great. Yeah. I still use the Stingray motion blur hanging off a GMAS tracer camera a good amount to do motion blur on motion vector driven mats in GMAS tracer, just because it's faster, and the result that you get from just the regular action tracer motion blur with vectors is kind of weird to me sometimes. So I know it's abandoned Matchbox software, but I still like it.
It's not abandoned if it's still in there. I think a lot more people are going to be using it. We should ask the dev team if, well, they won't tell us, but if they're seeing any metrics that show that all of a sudden more things are being hung off the camera. Love it.
All right, so let's say that's all I need to do on this shot for today is just get that little blood mat sorted out. I'm going to render out the shot, send it off to my supervisor or the client to see if they're happy with that mat. So now I can go in and stop my time log, and it's going to ask if I want to log 15 minutes to that shot in ShotGrid. And that's that. Now I can go ahead and render this shot. Sorry to make you guys watch this, but it will come back later, I promise.
Just while this is rendering, the chat again has kind of been blowing up with people absolutely loving this stuff. Quinn just brought up a good point too, that hanging the blur off of the camera Also helps with getting an even blur on all masks when you have multiple splines. Very good.
Exactly. If you have a bunch and you decide that it needs to be all soft, you either need to go into every single Gmask object and change the value, or just give up and blur downstream in your node. All right, so let's say I want to leave a comment in Chakra that this is a blood stain matte and link it to the roto task in Chakra. All right, moving on to the next shot. This is similar stuff that I wanted to show about frequency separation and motion vectors, but this one I kind of want to take it from the other side. So, like I said, motion or frequency separation is all about sort of looking at the difference between your image when it's blurred and when it's not blurred. And let's say that I wanted to track something to this beam of light that's going across her face. Then I really don't want the high frequencies to be factored in, because there are such nice crisp skin and eyebrow and eyelash details that almost certainly the motion vectors are going to grab onto that, even though this beam of light is pretty contrasty. But if I take just the low pass of this shot, which is, you could also just, apply a 8.1 blur on the shot and get the same result. Now it's gotten rid of all that skin texture. And now if I use the motion vectors that I've cached from just this low pass result, now I can attach things to the beam of light. So this is a kind of corny effect, but let's say that I wanted to, attach a sort of like scanning little like laser beam to that. I drew a little, silly little shape on this and just grabbed some red. And now I'm using the motion vectors from the low pass of this shot. And if I set a reference frame, now the laser will stick to that beam of light. Obviously, there's some edge issues at the top and bottom that I'd have to deal with if this was a real shot. But yeah, that's the idea. If you want to, track a shadow or some sort of lighting change, you can get rid of all the distracting factors by just using the low frequency parts of the image, and use motion vectors to track those.
That's great. Love it.
All right, so let me render out this shot as well, and then I'll show you another little Python workflow thing that I set up for us.
Sweet. Just going through the chat here to see if there are any other questions that I've missed. I don't think so. Love it. All right, moving on.
All right, once this Chakra publish finishes, I will show you basically what the next step is. Let's say I'm happy with those two shots. I want to send them out to the client. I'm going to just refresh my publish sequence and rename them. I don't know about you guys, but I've always found that dynamic tokens are just more trouble than they're worth. So I just go in and manually hit rename when I need to refresh the token values. But anyway, so from here, I want to create slates and create.
You should write a Python script to fix that.
Exactly.
This is the Python fun show.
I want to create deliverable masters for the client. I want to create both like an online and an offline copy. The offline that will have color baked in, and the online that would be, if this shot was, raw and log, the log version. And I want to attach a slate to every shot that I'm delivering without having to manually make them. So I wrote a script to do all that. I do want to say a big shout out to Mike V, who I believe was in the chat earlier. Hopefully he still is, because this is heavily draws from one of your slate generator scripts. I just sort of customized it to our workflow. But I'm going to change the name to this subclipped out, just the two shots that we worked on. Call this comp submissions. And then if I go into my contextual menu, create shot masters, you can see in my console, it is buzzing away, creating and loading setup files. And then it will launch a media export dialog for me and start cranking out some deliverable masters. Cool. So now we can see I got 2 reels back, one for the high res online and one that has the timeline effects baked in. I had tagging set up in here, I guess. But yeah, so if I pull up the slate that it generated, it grabbed a lot of the shot metadata itself directly from the Flame API, the duration, the resolution, the color space, and the file name, and then it got the project name and the shot name and the shot description, and that description that I entered into my publish dialog from the shot grid API, and the two sets, like I said, one of them has the look effect color correct baked in to simulate, a CDL value that you might want to apply to your shots to send back to editorial. And one of them is just the raw original plate. Yeah, that's basically that.
I love it. So as somebody who only ever had dealt with the slating of a shot within batch, this fascinates me, because what I ended up having to do was, like, at the end of my tree, I had a compass that would have a mux node in it with a slip of -1 to accommodate, a slate frame that would go in. But it all happened within batch. I never thought about doing it after the fact or doing it in the timeline. And I have seen people do what you're doing with the slate frame here, and pulling information from ShotGrid. But I've only ever seen them use Nuke. So I think this is a wonderful implementation for how to deal with a slate.
Yeah, I have this whole setup on my GitHub, which I will put on the forum or something later. I haven't put it on the portal just because it seemed a bit too specific to our specific workflow. But if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share it. The other nice thing about this that I've realized is that for people who like to nerd out on the metadata stuff, if I made a deliverable straight from the output of the write file, it's going to have the tape name of the original clip. And at this point, I really want the tape name to switch over to, my shot name and version name. So if I create this mezzanine sequence that I call it, this sort of like crossover between our internal renders and our external renders, now these files that I render out will actually have the correct tape name that I want it to have in here, which I found trickier to do making the slates directly in batch than doing them as timelines.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is there's only so much stuff available, I guess, from the Flame API or to the Flame API in batch versus what you're doing here. So great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, all that's coming through in the chat is just praise. So absolutely love it. No questions from anybody yet, which is wonderful. So I want to thank both of you guys. Whoops, hold on, wait, there we go. I want to thank both of you guys for coming on today and for sharing your knowledge with the community, and for being such just active participants in the Logik community. So thank you both very much, and I'm gonna say goodbye to you. We'll see you over on the patrons chat in a few minutes, and I'm going to take care of some business and wrap up the show. But thank you both very much. Great
and also,
stuff.
I just want to say, there are so many people in the chat right now who I've learned so much from watching your appearances on here and elsewhere on the forum. And just thank you all so much for being a great community.
Love it. Great job, guys. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes over on Zoom. Thanks. We got some prizes to give away, friends. Let's take care of that. Oh, Jeff, it worked. All right. I have 2 prizes to give away today. The first is a 1-month license of the Boris FX Suite. That's everything Boris FX makes. So let me go ahead and shuffle up the list here. All right. And the lucky winner is Luke. Congratulations, Luke Job. And I then have 1 month gift certificate to Logik Academy Pro. Let's shuffle up the list here. And that's going to Johnny Semerod. Congratulations, John. All right. Wonderful. We are going to go back to, Jeff, we are going to tempt fate and go back to the slideshow. And if I can find it on my screen here, you'd think with a widescreen Mac, I'd be able to, I'd have enough room here. But okay. All right, let's see. Jeff? Yes, coming up next week on Logik Live, our friend Jeff Kyle is going to host Sunday, May 23rd. Flame artist Rufus Blackwell returns to Logik Live. Just please note the special time. We're going to be doing this at 12 p.m. Eastern next week. And Rufus is an amazing flame artist. I'm sure you remember his last appearance with all that crazy spot he did where everything was shot via drone and then using motion vectors to line up plates. Anyway, Rufus is a genius, and very much looking forward to that show. Thank you very much, Jeff, for hosting. We want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon. As I said, we could not do this without you. You make it all possible. So thank you so much. We have 154 patrons right now supporting Logik and Logik Live. So thank you all very much. If you'd like to become a patron and support what we're doing here with Logik, you can, for as little as $5 a month, you get access to some exclusive content like the show we do afterwards with our guests, and a Logik Challenge coin, and the reception that we're going to have at NAB. You can go to patreon.com/LogikTV and sign up. If you haven't signed up for the forum yet, please do. It's where it's all happening. And also be sure to check out the Logik.tv Discord for some real-time help. I was having trouble last week setting up the operating system on this HP machine here, and some of our friends over on the Discord helped me out in real time, which was lovely. I'm speaking directly to you, Phil, man. Thank you. If you haven't already liked and subscribed the Logik Live YouTube channel, please do. And be sure to check out the Logik merch store to make some purchases to make sure you get, what do we say, Jeff? Make sure the flame artist in your life is looking their best when they're doing their best. I'm putting this up here, the Logik affiliate links for Boris FX. If you need anything from Boris FX, if you need it within the next week or something, use one of our affiliate links. However, I have not been told yet, but I'm sure they're going to have an NAB special. So if you can hold off, I would hold off, and you'll probably get a better deal in the next week or so. But if you need something immediately, Logik.tv/BorisFX to help both of us. And be sure to check out Looper for live collaboration for video pros. If you need to be able to live stream or play your session for your clients in a way that looks much better than like a Zoom or a Google Meet share, definitely check out Looper, and you can get a 1 month free for new users by going to this URL here. All right, that's going to do it for Logik Live, my friends. Thank you very much. I want to thank both my guests. Thank you to the community, and thank you to all of our patrons and sponsors. I appreciate you all. We will see you all next week, and I hope to see a lot of you out at NAB. Have a great week, everybody.